Usually I'd give you the satisfaction of changing my shirt before batch record a bunch of videos, but just don't feel like it tonight. So, tonight we're talking about buying used cars, mainly because I like buying used cars, and it's a problem. So if you're going to go purchase your first used car, there's a few things you need to consider here, and especially if you're going to purchase a used project car. Now, the main thing you need to think about here is, can you do the work? And what I mean by that is simply just, can you do the work, period? Do you have the tools? Do you have the garage? Do you have the facility? A parking slip? Somewhere you actually can do the work physically. If you do, great. So the first thing you need to pick out is where you want to start. What do you actually want to do? Do you want a car you can just jump in and go? Do you want a car you fix the body on? Do you want a car you do the engine on? What do you want to do, or what can you do physically? What do you have the ability to do? What do you have the space to do? What do you have the facility to do? And the big key that a lot of people forget about is, how can you save money on this project? Now, I understand that throughout this project we're going to spend money, and I understand on this project we're going to waste a lot of time and energy and effort and things like that. But we also need to get money back. That's the entire point of this, right? And if it's not to get it back, it's at least to make the hobby cheaper so we can enjoy it more often and with more cars. But let's say you have something in mind. Let's say you have a second Gen F body in mind, and you want to work on one of those. There are some very specific things you want to consider with those that are different versus like an A body. If I'm going to buy a $5,000 78 Trans Am, it's not going to be as nice as if I buy a $5,000 78 Malibu, right? There are just different price brackets for different cars, and depending on where you are and what you want to do, that will change and impact your buying habits. And whether you're looking to buy something at an auction, in person, on a private dealer, whatever, there are a few things that you really need to look out for, and they're kind of general across the entire board. And there are a few things that I look for specifically that is probably different than most guys, but let's talk about that really quickly. So the big thing that I look for is fresh oil. To me, fresh oil is a bad thing. Fresh oil tells me that person is trying to hide something or something is amiss. Unless that person has good documentation saying, hey, yep, the car's just well taken care of. It's just a nice example of a vehicle. Now, if I'm going to go check out a car that's like a 68 Le Mans and it's rusted out, but it's got brand new oil for some reason, that is just weird, and something's probably wrong. Now, at the same point, too, I personally do not want the car to be cleaned out. I do not want the car to be scrubbed out and just well manicured for me before I get there to purchase it, for one reason. The big thing is, you're going to run into people that will clean the car out and they'll hide things. They'll use that opportunity to hide problems. Things like major oil leaks, transmission leaks, things like rear end fluid leaking, things like they'll put improper bolts in. I've seen a lot of just people doing sketchy things to get one over on you. So it's important to go with somebody that actually has an idea about these vehicles as well. Or, like I said, do your research and be more than competent in the vehicle before you go out there and do the investigation of the vehicle. A question that nobody wants to ask right away is the title clear, or is it a branded title? What is going on with the title? A lot of guys will list cars as bill of sale. That is not a title. That is different, at least in Michigan. That is not a title. You need to have a title for the vehicle for it to be worth anything in my eyes. If there's no title for it, it's a parts car. That's just point blank. I don't care how nice it is. It's a parts car to me. Some people will argue that you can get a title super easily. Some people, and I've actually seen and dealt with friends that have done a title search for a vehicle and had the car taken away from them because of whatever legal ramifications that were upholding to that car before they purchased it. It's just a problem that I don't want you to have to experience. It's not a fun time if you lose out time, money, effort, and then you lose the interest in the hobby too. It's just a rough way to go. But if you're looking for a vehicle that you can drive it. Test drive the vehicle. If the vehicle is a good runner, good driver, the person should not have an issue letting you drive the vehicle if you are a serious buyer. There are people that will not let you look too intently until you start talking actual figures, actual money, because a lot of these cars, if you're looking in higher value stuff, is going to be very, very, very expensive and very, very rare. So they don't want you fondling their expensive cars and potentially scratching or ruining something that you don't have the money to afford anyway. And I understand that if you move into this process and you have $100,000 in your pocket or in your suitcase or whatever, you don't want somebody saying, don't scratch my paint. But that's just how it is. People like their vehicles, they respect their vehicles, and we should do the same. Once you're an interested buyer and showing actual willing and intent to purchase the vehicle, they should have no problem letting you drive that vehicle and experience that vehicle. Unless it's a weird one-off thing, like the car's got 0 miles on it. It just doesn't happen though. Something to be interested in and noticing of is the entry and exit point of the vehicle. So a lot of times you'll end up picking up a second gen F-body, because that's what I'm most familiar with, for around $2,000 to $4,000 as a shell. A good runner, a good example would be around $10,000, a nice example would be around $20,000, and a great example would be around $30,000 to $40,000. That is the entry and exit point. The big key here is what is going to be your midpoint. The midpoint is going to be whether you can profit or not. Do you have the ability to do it? Now, and I keep saying that because the moment you start paying somebody else to do your work, whether you like, I'll have somebody else do the ball joints. I'll have somebody else tack that weld on. I'll have somebody else throw the seats in. That is when you start, well, it's an extra $1,000. Well, that's $1,000. Well, that's $1,000. Well, now there's no profit in the car, and there's nothing we could do. And that's a real problem that you can run into really quickly is if you can't do the work yourself, there's really no money in working on cars, unfortunately. But it's the way it goes. When it comes to the car physically itself, there are a few things that I look for. Body mounts, basically. If they're rusted, that's a huge key as to the car has been not well maintained, it has not had body mounts replaced in the life of the car. There could be other issues with other mounts and suspension problems. So if that is an issue, I will then move on to checking for, like the second gen, the leaf spring mount on the back is known for rusting out. The leaf spring mount on the front is known for rusting out. So we'll check the subframe, we'll check the other suspension bits, just to make sure that all the connection points are solid and good and torque boxes are fine. On an A body, I would look for things like, so on the frame, you've got the frame rails on the front of the car. As it goes back to the firewall, there are 2 body mounts back there. I would look for those, make sure that's not rusted out in the plate. I would go to the back of the trunk, make sure the frame brace to the trunk is not rusted out, because that is a major problem on those cars. And I would check the quarter panels on those cars, because if it's a Le Mans especially, they're coming on up, and replacing Le Mans gills is extremely expensive and hard to do, because it's hard to find the parts, and it's just not a fun process to line those gills up in the right spot. But that brings us to purchasing the car, like actually getting the vehicle and getting it. Suggest do it is through a private owner. I prefer this because I am personally a very one-on-one person. I like talking to the person that owned the vehicle, talking to the person that has had the vehicle sitting outside in the garage or whatever for 20 years, and I want to know that their grandpappy owned the car, and then their dad got it, and then they got it, and then they didn't do anything with it. I want to know that kind of stuff so that I know what I'm getting into. I don't want to do an auction car and be like, okay. That being said, the private owner cars, people can be nefarious. People can try to win out over top of you, and that is always a problem. But everybody's out for profit, so you look out for yourself at a certain point. And like I mentioned, auctions. So auctions are an excellent way to do it. eBay Motors, Mecum, things like that. There are a lot of avenues and a lot of different ways to get car auctions kicked off. The good thing with car auctions is you can get stuff for an absolute steal, like almost free in some cases. There are some cases where you'll get too excited and overpurchase. It's nature of the beast and part of the game. But, and you don't really look over the car. I mean, you don't get to actually touch the car, move over it and drive it and do things with it. You don't get to experience the vehicle before you put money on it, and that's kind of a problem too. But, if you're willing to actually go and deal with somebody specifically for a vehicle, go to a dealership. If you have in mind what you want to buy, go to a dealership like Maple Motors. There are not a lot of places that I would push you to go buy a car, but Maple Motors is absolutely that place. I've never dealt with these guys, but everything I've absolutely heard about them has been freaking phenomenal. And if you're interested in more tips about buying used cars, especially from dealerships, check out their video right here. Have a good one, and I will see you on the road.